NOPD officer is under criminal investigation after cameras showed her NOPD vehicle far away from the detail work she was being paid for.
The concerns about whether she violated NOPD policy of some calling for her removal from a state board that oversees punishment for state troopers. Here's our newest attention to the details investigation. Even though an internal NOPD investigation found possible criminal violations against Captain Sabrina Richardson, she still sits on the State Police Commission, a state board that oversees discipline for state police troopers.
Why would you have somebody who has flouted the law and flouted the regulations be a judge of other police? It makes no sense whatsoever.
Governor Edwards appointed Richardson to that board in 2020 after the governor's office received an email from New Orleans attorney Ike Spears, who wrote that Congressman Cedric Richmond recommended the appointment of Richardson to the State Police Commission. She's now under criminal investigation by the Orleans District Attorney after NOPD Sergeant Nick Gernon found 9 instances where Richardson was paid for a detail on the East Bank, while a license plate reader camera captured pictures of her police unit across the river on the West Bank.
Of course it's not fair, and she has no credibility. She has no credibility. I mean, you wouldn't want to have somebody who had been found to have falsified their IRS tax filings to suddenly run a tax audit on somebody, would you? No, of course not. I mean, you have to have the people running these investigations who are cleaner than clean. And she's far from that.
We requested every time a license plate reader captured Richardson's unit. The city has more than 100 of these cameras. The NOPD would only hand over 6 months' worth. They say the rest have been deleted. We found 8 instances where Richardson worked a detail, but the cameras caught her police unit miles away. Like November 27th of last year, leading up to the Bayou Classic, Richardson worked a detail at Champion Square from 11 a.m. till 4 p.m. But at 1:07, a license plate reading camera captured this picture of her police unit on the West Bank, across the river, 5 miles away from Champion Square. About an hour later, another camera caught her police unit on Chef Highway in New Orleans East, 6.5 miles away from Champion Square. Richardson used to run the NOPD's Public Integrity Bureau. PIB is responsible for investigating complaints made against police officers. Now Richardson heads the NOPD's 3rd District, which covers Gentilly and Lakeview.
You have the highest ranking NOPD officer in PIB that this is the example you're setting, and you wonder why. You have an officer that should be overseeing other people's payrolls and observing problems, and she has her own.
Richardson worked her last detail on April 2nd. The NOPD suspended her from off-duty work pending a criminal investigation. In April, the final 4 hired Richardson to work a detail at Waldenburg Park and was billed $671 for her 11 hours of work, 11 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night. But 45 minutes before her shift ended, a license plate reading camera took this picture on the West Bank. NOPD watchdog Skip Gallagher has been looking into the detail program for more than a year. To him, these findings are a clear violation.
You're not providing a service, and you can ask a lawyer. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm a chemist, right? You can't do that. I can't do that at my job, right? I don't think you can do that at yours either.
In November of last year, the NOPD moved Richardson from the Public Integrity Bureau to the head of the 3rd District, which covers Gentilly and Lakeview.
She's a captain. She does all of these things, and what happens? Is she demoted? No. Is she suspended? No. Is she terminated? No. She's given control over a department. She's put in charge of a unit, of a division.
Of a district.
Of a district. All the police officers in that district report to her. If she's doing this, well, I assume I can do the same. Everybody knows what's going on. Apparently everybody but the chief of police knew what was going on and did nothing. And for her now to be the head of a district after all of this is shocking.
In December, the NOPD launched an administrative investigation into more than 20 officers, including Richardson and another PIB officer, Wayne Jacques. Jacques is another officer who we discovered was paid for detail work while his NOPD unit was miles away from his assigned location. The NOPD tells us the scope of those administrative investigations was narrow, only looking to see if the officers violated a policy that limits the amount of time an officer can work in a 24-hour period to 16 hours and 35 minutes, and whether they were paid for off-duty detail and NOPD duty shifts at the same time. Once those investigations were complete, Richardson and Jacques were allowed to do details again. That's when the Public Integrity Bureau received a formal complaint against its former leader, Richardson, related to details. PIB recused itself from the investigation and assigned it to homicide investigator Nick Gernon. That's when Gernon did a more thorough look, including pulling license plate reading cameras, and found Richardson committed 44 violations, some of them possibly criminal. After finishing that investigation, the NOPD moved Gernon from homicide to the crime lab, what some officers consider a demotion.
The one person who was a thorough investigator, Gernon, who did his job when he's not even in PIB, but they asked him to do it anyway, and he did his job. And how did he get thanked for doing that job? He gets transferred. Not to PIB, maybe that's where he should have gone, but he got transferred to probably a job that was not the one that he wanted. The timing is more than coincidental. You know, I don't believe when they say this was not a demotion, this was not retribution. He should be the poster boy for how you investigate these kinds of things. He should be the one in front of the recruiting class. He should be the one in charge of PIB because he knows how to investigate.
NOPD Chief Sean Ferguson says Gernon was not moved out of retaliation. But while Richardson is under criminal investigation, she continues to take a public role with the NOPD, even presenting an award at a new recruit installment this month.
What message are you sending, Lee, when somebody who's flouted all the regulations, of which there's been no denial whatsoever, and is under criminal investigation, is given these leadership positions and put out front as a paragon of virtue, the second head of the PIB who's there to help inaugurate the new recruiting class? What kind of message does that send?
The NOPD chief has said Richardson doesn't deserve any sanctions until it's determined if she committed any violations.
We were talking about the officer being not in the location they were paid to be in at that time. Did the client or the vendor give them permission to leave? You know, there's so many other unknown elements to this that we really have to look into. I'm not trying to sit here to give any excuses, but there are a lot that goes into this investigation that is still right now an ongoing investigation.
But Tulane law professor Joel Friedman says the violations of NOPD policies are enough to ask for her removal from a state board that determines the discipline of state police troopers.
You're under criminal investigation. In our criminal justice system, you are presumed innocent. So I'm not suggesting that I know that she's guilty of a crime and therefore something should happen. But she's certainly guilty of violating the police regulations. So she should be stripped of this position for violating all the police regulations.
The governor's office issued a statement to Fox 8 tonight saying under the state constitution, the governor can only remove a member of the state police commission for cause after being served with written specifications of the charges against him and being afforded an opportunity for a public hearing thereon by the governor. It goes on to say that the governor will determine if the allegations against Richardson require removal and won't comment on the allegation before the public hearing takes place.